The Stack, a podcast for IT and MSP professionals, with your host, David Papp.
Welcome to the MSP Stack Podcast. I'm your host, David Papp. We are joined today by Jeremy Hayward from Solut, based out of Edmonton. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, David. Great to be here.
You bet. So let's talk about the plight of the CIO and having a seat at the business table. What does that mean to you?
David, I think what it means to me is, as a CIO myself and working in IT for 20 years, one of the bigger challenges we've always had is getting your voice heard at the C-suite or at the board or whatever have you in an organization. I think for a lot of times, for many years, we were always kept outside as an afterthought. And as things have changed, we've had to break down the door. Held off by certain other business units. Historically, you'll see us fall under the IT usually falls under the finance side, and usually the finance person brings and translates that information to the board. I think the opportunity is right now with translating technology and business to really push through and get at that table as a CIO. And I'm starting to see that more and more, and being involved in more steering meetings with our clients. And I think it's just something that we need to keep pushing on to be able to show the value of IT and how it can be a differentiator for your business.
That is so true. It's always been a running joke of how IT was always this necessary evil. It was an expense line item. Yep. And it was a very difficult conversation with a lot of clients to help them understand that we actually are enabling their business to be more competitive, increase collaboration, communication, right, make them competitive in today's market. And then of course, to what happened is 2 years ago, we had the great giant tech reset button when COVID hit. And I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of organizations on, oh my, we're not ready for this.
Yep.
How do we deal with a remote workforce? How do we make our business more competitive? And the problem I feel with a lot of MSPs was those relationships were not ready yet. They weren't established properly as CIO. And in fact, a lot of technicians, that's not the type of conversations they were having with the businesses.
No, not at all. And I think that's part of the challenge. I mean, we come from, you and I have known each other, many years, and we come from a tech background. But the ability for most technicians to have those conversations, they're tough for people because usually those individuals are, quite smart. They know their craft, they know it well, and I think we have done ourselves a bit of a disservice as an industry by not learning the soft skills and teaching the techs the soft skills to have those conversations, to translate the technology to the business and why it matters. Why do offsite backups matter? Why does a disaster recovery plan matter? Why do you need to have, RPO and RTO as far as, your recovery point objectives or recovery time objectives? And I think that those conversations have to get up at the table and translated to a business loss. And what is the downtime for your organization translate to in dollars and cents? Once we have those conversations, you start to get the attention, especially of the ownership, and it starts to make sense. So I think that's something that we need to educate people more with, and the technicians have to be listening for those conversations and be able to translate it better.
That is so true. So true. Being able to also, I've discovered, not communicate in terms of what it means to them and their business and their language. And that whole risk management, risk assessment aspect of, by the way, what does it cost your organization per hour to be down? Like, what if everything was shut down? What does that mean? How about this server? How about, and you're looking for critical functions. How about your internet connection? How about, no email? What does that mean to you? And then I think then you can actually have a nice, proper conversation with the clients. So are you doing anything actively within your business and your staff to shape things this way? Sure. I'd love to hear some ideas that you have.
So, right now, we have a CIO offering as a service. and tied in with digital transformation for our clients. So all of our clients that come to the table now, we insist on having a technical account manager or a CIO attached to their account. So the first thing we do is you say, okay, where do you want your IT to go? It's not just a dollars and cents commoditized situation. We want to make sure that you're pointed in the right direction. So we attach that to our agreements, all of our agreements with our clients now. And the idea is to become that trusted advisor out of the gate, and not necessarily just look at giving them what they want, but what they need. I had a conversation with a client yesterday about a project, and knowing the organization, doing an assessment on their people and how they handle technology. This client wanted something that was in a design that was not going to really work for their business. I was able to see that and translate that to him, and I said I could charge you and give you this this great solution, but you don't need it. It's not necessary. Was able to get that down and explain that to them, and it worked well. Where if you're a technician, sometimes you just come in, throw it on the table and say, well, this is because I said so. And then it's a conversation stopper. If you translate it in language they can understand and actually push that down, that's a good thing. We're seeing a lot of clients with technological debt, probably more than I've seen in years. And it's becoming a challenge for most companies, because years ago, when 10% of your business was only using technology, and something was down, it wasn't a big deal. You could pull out pen and paper. Well, these days, there's not much that doesn't touch technology in your business. And how do we translate that to you need to take this seriously, or you're going to have some real challenges.
That is so true. So how often are you having these conversations, or does it depend on the size of the business? And
depends on the size of the business. So my largest engagement is a probably a weekly 4-hour engagement where you sit down with the client, have some conversations, scope out the roadmap to the next few years, and you start working on the things that are going to transform the business. Sometimes for smaller clients, it's a monthly review or a quarterly review. You leave the day-to-day service to the service team, but you, as a CIO, you start to map out what the future looks like. Cloud integration, digital side of things. What are you doing with other areas of your business, not just IT? How can technology fit into marketing? How can technology fit into manufacturing? So it will all depend on the size of the engagement, but anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a week to maybe 4 to 8 hours a month, depending on the organization size.
Yeah, fantastic. I think there's also another hot topic that is actually demanding this, is the entire insurance aspect, which is yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conversations on that when renewals are coming up here.
Huge, really, very much so right now. So we're doing a lot of security assessments. Multi-factor authentication is a big one right now, that if you're not in that game, then your insurance is getting denied. Just like backups were, many years ago. If you weren't doing backups, you weren't looking after your business. Well, today it's the security side. If you're not doing the right things today, and making sure the network's secure, it's not a matter of if, but when you're going to get hacked. So that conversation is coming to the forefront, and it's pushing the envelope for security assessments and for CIO assessments on a regular basis. So not just sort of ad hoc, but okay, every year we need to do an IT assessment, we need to do a security assessment to make sure you're compliant for your insurance needs, because the numbers on the premiums come down quite prevalently if you comply to some of those requirements for the insurance companies.
Yeah, or they won't even renew your insurance.
They won't. Yeah, won't even renew. I mean, and I can say as an MSP owner, that's about a good chunk of our business. Our premiums have gone up. And so we're not just looking at securing ourselves, but we need to secure our clients so that we're safe as well. Because as a lot of the tools are getting hacked. We become a little bit of a target. So it's important for inside your business as an owner of a technology company, but also for your clients as well.
You're listening to The Stack.
Thanks to cybersecurity leader ESET for sponsoring the podcast. ESET delivers award-winning cybersecurity technology to protect all aspects of your digital life with cutting-edge expertise and advanced machine learning to secure Windows, Mac OS, and Android devices. ESET bundles antivirus, anti-spyware, device control, web filtering, two-way firewall, anti-spam, remote management, and two-factor authentication solutions, and is a recognized leader in home and business cybersecurity solutions.
What's in your stack?
So I'm curious, when it comes to your clients that are being moved into this direction of, the CIO services being brought to the table, the security aspect becoming a requirement. What is your position on clients who don't want to do that? They refuse. They're like, I don't want to pay for that. They're the bean counters who are like, I only want to pay for Microsoft licensing and whatever. Like, do you support them? Do you say it's restricted? Do you have them indemnify you of anything like that? I'm just curious what you've done.
Sure. So out of the gate, let's start it. If your technology is not up to date, or the plan to bring it up to date, then that's a risk for you and for us. From the security side, we strongly recommend a security audit as soon as we come in the door, even if it's a light security audit. And then if we get pushed back, we usually make the case as to why that needs to happen. The technical audits have to happen right out of as well to make sure the technology is sound, as I said. The other portion is the backups is an example. So on backups, if you're not doing offsite backups, likely not a good fit. But now it's coming to the point, we're not quite there yet, but it's getting there, where if organizations aren't using MFA for access to email and to their network, then we're having a hard stop, that we're not doing business with you. It's got to be in place out of the gate, and usually can make that case. I think there's been the pushback happens sometimes with the bean counters, but these days, with everything that's going on in the news and all the hacking going on, the conversations are becoming a little less hard to have, and the pushback is less.
Absolutely. So are you trying to standardize your services? Or are you finding that they're becoming still very custom based on the client? Like, because we've got this giant move to the cloud with everything, and everything's being pushed online, that I almost feel like, I don't want to say one size fits all, because there are custom applications that are based on the industry that your clients are in. Right. But there's a huge movement to getting everything online.
Well, what I start with is we do a bit of a compliance check. We look at you look at the technology side. Can you go to the cloud? Yes, you have the ability, the bandwidth for your internet's there. But then you got to sit down and say, okay, are there requirements for you to be there by business? So, or is there something stopping you from being there? And then they answer those questions. And then we do a technical viability to say, okay, you start with mail. Everybody's moving mail to the cloud, whether it be, M365 or G Suite. That's usually the first piece. And then, you look at SaaS. Okay, you've got QuickBooks. Can we go online with that? Usually a yes or no fairly quickly. Sage 50, application side. Then if you look at the server side, it becomes a little more cumbersome when it comes to the file server, because that's where the change management piece comes in quite a bit, because you've got files on a file server everybody's used to. You move them to SharePoint or Dropbox. Those projects become more cumbersome, and the change management piece becomes harder. So it takes a little more planning and a little more thought about, okay, this will work for me as a tech, but will it actually work for the people that are using it? And I think one of the gaps we're missing is really digging into the change management and the training post project. So for us, I've got probably 4 clients out of the 70 or 80 that we have that are full cloud. So whether that's in Azure, AWS, we standardize on Azure. But they were progressive. Very progressive. Most clients these days are in some sort of hybrid, based on need, based on infrastructure, based on where they're at. And I'm a big proponent of pushing them to the cloud, but not just because they need to be in the cloud. There has to be a good business case for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Solid advice. Are you seeing much happening in terms of like taking it the next step? And what I mean by that is say business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, and all that. Or again, is it based on the size of the organization?
Based on the size of the organization. So, at the very minimum, we like, as I mentioned earlier, we like to sit down and talk about what are your recovery time objectives. Like, if your building was to go down tomorrow, how long do you feel you can be down? And most clients will tell you, 3 or 4 days. And I call that not true, because usually when it happens, they're like, how come we're not up in a day? Then beyond that, you're like, well, have you done a full plan? Like we build IT disaster recovery plans. Like, okay, this is what happens if, this is how this gets restored from an IT perspective. But then usually that opens up the conversation about, business recovery plans, not just an IT disaster recovery plan, and then opens up the opportunity to talk about the rest of the organization, because IT is one part, but as you know, there's much more to it than just IT. So we've been doing a lot of planning in that space on the consulting side, probably doing at least one a month right now within our own client base. And then outside of our client base, we're getting asked to validate and help build disaster recovery plans for other organizations as well that are outside of our base.
Solid. So I like to wrap up all of our interviews with, I'm putting on the spot here, but basically a single point that you use as a takeaway. It's like a power tip. If they completely ignored everything in the podcast, what is it that you would want somebody to come away with as one piece of advice?
When you get resistance when providing a solution, try to remember that the individuals that you're talking to are, they're smart people, but they're not you, and they don't understand technology. So simplify and make examples that they can understand and relate to. And oftentimes I find that, getting in a room and whiteboarding a session is very helpful in showing, a picture of what things look like. I was in a room yesterday where, we were having a conversation and the client just wasn't getting it. So I said, give me the marker. I got up and I drew the full network map out in front of him in about 5 minutes. And he said, this makes sense to me, because I think we get caught up in analogies and as text, we speak the text speak, and they don't understand that. So don't talk down to the client. Don't make them feel inferior. Make them feel like they're part of the solution moving forward, and you need their input. Because if you know the solution's right, they know they need it, but you got to bridge the middle and you got to translate to language that they can understand.
I love that advice. I actually I wrote a book on that. My entire basis was bridging the gap, and honestly putting it in terms that they can understand, and not doing what we call the alphabet soup, right?
That's right. Well, and there's enough of it, obviously. David, we've been around a long time. I can still tech, but I get lost sometime, as well. So if I do, and obviously technology is changing at such a rapid pace, we need to educate people more. And also, you're seeing a lot of the new generation of owners and managers are more tech savvy than the ones that we grew up with. So you need to be up to speed, because sometimes your clients are dragging you along and not the other way around, because they see technology and think it's the next greatest thing. So
it's so true. There's many more early adopters out there right now than there used to be.
Which is great. I love progression, but sometimes I've had to back clients off.
Yeah,
not ready for that yet. Trust me. But.
Love it. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for joining us today. That is fantastic information you shared.
Thank you, David. Great to be here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the MSP Stack Podcast. Remember, if you liked it, hit thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit thumbs down twice. If you'd like to be on the show, head on over to the MSPstack.com and click on the Be a Guest button. The Stack is made possible through the generous support of MSP Corp. What's in your stack?